Hit it, Phil.
Can it be the breeze that fills the trees with rare and magic perfume? Oh, no, it isn't the breeze. It's Jackson time. La, da, da, da.
Okay. Well, hello again. This is Buck Benny speaking. I am joined by Hope Sears, and we're here to present the Friars Club Roast, which is a lot of fun. And this is of Jack Benny. It's from 1970, and it's my favorite. There's a couple roasts of Jack Benny that are out there. I think audio-wise, there might even be more. But anyway, there's two video ones, and this is one of them. This one, I like it because it has his cast on it, or some of his cast, which is really nice to see them on here. I love the beginning of it. It has Spiro Agnew on there, and he's pretty funny, actually, for the vice president at the time. This was in a very narrow window when he was actually the vice president, because of course, he ends up having to leave the vice presidency, and Gerald Ford gets that. I always thought it would be Agnew, it would be so frustrating if you're Agnew, because you had to leave and Ford took over for you, and it's the only vice president that becomes president, as Ford, because Nixon has to step down. And so Agnew had to be kicking himself, because he's like, I could have been president of the United States, at least for a little window of time. But a crazy, crazy time in our country's history. But let's get into this episode and see what Hope was thinking about it. Hope, what are some of your favorite parts or things you wanted to point out in this?
This is like one of my favorite things ever. It is one of my favorite roasts ever of all time.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite things of Jack's, actually, because I love there's other roasts of Jack, but the Dean Martin roasts are kind of formulaic, and they seem, I don't know to the extent that this was scripted, but the Dean Martin roasts, you can tell, are very scripted. And, but I do like too that this roast had his cast. It had Phil Harris, it has Dennis Day, and it has Ed Sullivan, which isn't his cast, but is relevant to the Jack Benny story. And so I really love it. It's one of my favorites, and I love the building on the jokes that have already happened. Even like Jack has some off the cuff remarks that I think are just like bring down the house.
Yes.
And so it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree. It's wonderful. And we have John that joined us. Hey, John.
Hello.
Hey, good to see you. We're talking about the Friars Club roast of Jack Benny. And I think Hope nailed it with where she was talking about how one guest brings up what the last guest talked about and so forth. And it just kind of builds on itself, and it does a wonderful job of that. I don't know. And she was pointing out how in the Dean Martin roast, it feels like it's written for them. It's all formulaic in some ways, where this feels less like that. I don't know. When I've talked about this roast in the past, folks have mentioned to me that they think that Phil's part's written for him and Dennis' part's written for him, and that's probably true. But I sure like to, in my head, envision that Harris wrote his part, and then Dennis was feverishly taking down notes as he read his part, and then Dennis plays off of that, because he does such a brilliant job. And I love how Jack talks about Dennis's piece and says something about, I didn't know you were that funny, or whatever, or I thought that was great. But anyway,
he said you're too funny to suit me.
Yeah, that's right. So,
yeah, well, even if they are, some of it is written by writers or anything, I think the way that they pull it off makes it seem natural, and there's obviously some amount of room for off the cuff spontaneity, and there's sort of a culture of hey, we're having fun, we're ribbing each other, which I really enjoy. Sometimes these roasts, especially when you get into like the year 2000 and things, they become a little, well, much too crude, and it seems like,
Well, much more vicious as well. I mean, where
yeah,
the actual insults seem like they're, if not designed to hurt the person, do often, I think, would hurt your feelings to have people say those things.
yeah,
In these roasts, they're more just fun send-ups of the person, and send-ups, a lot of it are built on characteristics that the person has overplayed anyway. That's why Jack is such a good target, because he has these things, the cheapness, all these things that he's built up over the years, his toupee, all of that he's already made fun of. So it's like fair game. Whereas a lot of these new folks don't have that, and they're picking apart their family and all sorts of private things that I think they should stay away from. But
yeah,
anyway,
there's certainly some things where if you were sensitive, you would be insulted by, like the old jokes with Ed Sullivan. But I feel like in this one, underneath everything, there's a sense of respect and fun, which is not always the case later on. And these are people who actually have some kind of relationship with each other, rather than just thinking, okay, who's the best at insults, let's bring him in.
Yeah. Agreed.
And like, even like with the Dean Martin roast, as much as I enjoy those roasts, it feels less off the cuff and stuff, because you have the never got a dinner, and then the drunken bit, and like it's all like a lot of collective little bits that have nothing to do with the person that really that's being roasted. And so I really like that this seems more like family that's kind of roasting him. And I like when Jack said, like, you're too funny to suit me for Dennis. I was like, I really thought, like, I tell people, this is where I really realized how funny Dennis was outside of his character on the show. Like, he was a funny guy. He could deliver a line, even whether it's scripted or not. He could deliver it very well.
Yeah, and it's so hilarious to see him now at this point in his life, because he is quite old. He's no little kid,
No.
and yet he opens his mouth, and all you hear is Dennis Day. It's like,
Yes.
little kid, or the young jerk, or whatever they used to call him back in the 30s. So
Yeah.
it's so fun to see him, and that he's still got that energy and youthfulness, even though he's getting old. And of course, Phil Harris is always an interesting character and delightful. And I thought, Johnny Carson is a terrific MC, and able to like keep it together without getting out of hand, and yet still add to the fun and spontaneity of it. But my favorite part has to be George Burns, just because that he and Jack Benny have that special rapport and relationship, and it's just great to watch Jack in that part, if nothing else. And you can tell that the stories that he told, like the one where he says to Jack, now it would be terrible if you started laughing when this singer starts singing. That actually happened in real life.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I love the bringing in the real life pieces. It just adds authenticity to the whole thing they're doing. And this roast, like I was saying to Faith before you got I think it's my favorite of all the roasts of anybody. Really, it's just fantastic. And the Phil and Dennis piece is so great. And then the starting of the Spiro Agnew at the beginning, I love that too. And like you say, Johnny is a great host. I mean, there's just everything about this is about as good as it could get. I can't remember, because I viewed part of this, but I didn't view it all last night. Now, is Rochester's not even on this, is he?
No.
Yeah, I would have loved to have Rochester on here. Don would have been nice to have on here, just more folks from his show. But certainly if I was going to only grab two people from his show, Dennis and Phil would be the two that I would grab. So that's cool that they could be on here.
I do want to kind of bring up for a second, like, I feel like this roast is so some people say, like when I try to I've suggested this for like a viewing, it's been kind of shied away from, and I wonder if it's because of like what joke that would be, or if there was any kind of bit. But my thoughts were, one of the jokes that I find really funny is when Jack has that line with Milton Berle off the cuff. That's like, he's like, Milton says like, "Oh, if I switch, you're next," and he said, "You did switch, and I wasn't next," and everybody laughs. But like, it's a joke, but it's also like, I find it funny just because, you know, he had that cross-dressing bit, which is I don't think that joke would have worked with anybody else, but it does with Milton.
Right. No, I
Yeah,
agree. And I think part of this though is that this roast might work better. I think it does probably for true Jack Benny fans. If you're a fan of Jack, you're a fan of the show, you've listened, you'll get more out of this. I would think maybe if you simply are a fan of general history and comedy and things, you might enjoy the Dean Martin roast better, because you might not know who Dennis Day is, you might not know who Phil Harris is, and things like you. I could see how somebody coming from the outside might not enjoy this as much. Certainly for anybody that has any knowledge of the Jack Benny show whatsoever, they would really enjoy this roast. I mean, this roast is just a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
Even the Milton Berle material, which was not, you know, my favorite, most hilarious stuff. Right. The fact that the audience is going nuts and thinks it's so funny, it's just a fun time. But I was actually surprised and impressed by the Ed Sullivan portion. I thought that was also very funny. Yeah. Especially Ed Sullivan's no comedian, but it was great material, especially for, you know, the history that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm always amazed well, in this especially, the quality and the caliber of comedy that comes out of everybody, which shows it's probably written for them, like we're saying, or at least partially written for them. But I think everybody brings their A game and really does a nice job. Yeah. And anything else we want to point out about this special, or we want to just get into it and let people see it? We're good.
Yeah, they don't have television like this anymore. I think it's a piece of history.
Well, and it doesn't feel like you have stars that are this close anymore. I mean, the closest we have to this sort of thing is probably like some of the fun little feuds that go on social media and things, like between Ryan Reynolds and who plays Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. Their stuff is funny back and forth. They would be interesting in a situation like this, a roast, but like we said, one, it gets too vicious on the roast, and two, you don't have where it feels like everybody on here has a relationship with Jack, and you wouldn't have. I think it'd be difficult to find where you'd have a whole slew of people that all are well known and have a relationship with, say, Ryan Reynolds. If you're doing a roast of Ryan Reynolds, it just doesn't work in the same way that it did back then. It doesn't seem like such a tight little community anymore of performers, and you don't have all the specials either, where they would appear on. A lot of these people would appear on one of Jack's specials, or Jack would appear on a Bob Hope special, or Johnny Carson would appear on Jack's special, and so they all get tied together so well. Now you just don't have those shows happening anymore. So anyway, enjoy this one. It's a great time capsule for its time period. It's from 1970. I think you'll all enjoy it. Like I say, it's a little shot, a slice of Spiro Agnew when he was the vice president for a very short amount of time, but it all works out. So there you go. Enjoy.